Welcome back, anomaly. A signal cut through the silence, not sound, pressure. The kind that makes your thoughts hesitate before forming. And now, you're here. Good. That means you didn't scroll away. That means something in you still responds to danger when it calls your name softly instead of screaming it. Before we begin, I want to remind you something. For the past 13 days, I went completely silent. I didn't step away to rest. I stepped away to build. I spent that time in voluntary isolation, creating a life-changing framework to help you master absolute emotional control and social sovereignty. My official playbook, The Power of the Unseen, drops in exactly 3 days on Gumroad. Show me your support on a comment below. Listen carefully, because what you went through was never random. It was never bad luck, and it was definitely never designed with your survival in mind. You were supposed to disappear inside it, quietly, permanently, completely, but you didn't. And that's where the paradox begins to breathe. You call it pain, but pain is just the human word for a system failure in reality's design, when something refuses to break the way it was engineered to. You were inserted into pressure that should have collapsed your identity. Emotional pressure, social pressure, internal pressure that rewired the way you look at yourself when no one is watching. And still, you're here, smiling sometimes, thinking sometimes, functioning in ways you were never supposed to recover into. Do you understand what that means? It means the architecture failed, and when systems fail, they don't announce it. They adapt around the anomaly. That's you, the part they didn't account for, the variable that refused to resolve. Now listen closer, because this is where the duality starts to fracture everything you think you know about yourself. You were taught there are two sides, light and dark, good and evil, angel and demon. But that's a comforting lie people tell themselves, so they don't have to admit something more terrifying. They are both at once, always. And so are you. That pain you survived didn't just wound you. It selected you, not because you were strong, but because you were exposed long enough to become unpredictable. And unpredictability is the only form of power that cannot be mapped. They expected you to heal into something soft again. They expected your edges to smooth out. They expected your anger to apologize for existing. But instead, something else happened. You started noticing patterns. You started reading silence like language. You started seeing people not for what they say, but for what they avoid becoming. That is not recovery. That is evolution through fracture. And here is the part nobody warns you about. When pain doesn't kill you, it doesn't leave you unchanged. It leaves you rearranged. There's a version of you that died in that experience. Quietly, invisibly, not physically, but socially, emotionally, structurally, and in its place, something else took shape. Something that doesn't fully belong to the version of you people remember. That's why they hesitate when they see you now. That pause, that microsecond where their confidence doesn't land correctly. They feel it before they understand it. You are not the same emotional equation anymore. And unresolved equations make people nervous because they can't predict the outcome. Now here's the manipulation the world never admits. They didn't just want you to survive. They wanted you to survive predictably, still agreeable, still readable, still safe to categorize. But you broke the agreement without saying a word. And that is why your existence feels heavier now. Not because you changed, but because you stopped performing the version of yourself that made others comfortable. Let that settle. because this is where your mind tries to defend the old identity. It will tell you you're overthinking. It will tell you you're imagining meaning. It will tell you to go back to being understandable. But something inside you already knows. There is no going back to something that no longer exists. Now listen, this is the darkest truth in the structure of transformation. The same pain that was supposed to erase you became the only reason you learned how to see through people. The same pressure that was meant to silence you taught you how to read silence itself. And the same environment that should have destroyed your identity forced you to build a second one underneath it. That second identity is not louder. It is not louder at all. It is quieter, which is why it is dangerous. Because silence that understands itself is no longer passive. It is observant, and observation, when sharpened long enough, becomes dominance without movement. You don't chase anymore. You assess. You don't react the same way anymore. You calculate delay. You don't attach easily anymore. You recognize patterns before they become emotional traps. And people around you, they feel it. They just can't name it, so they call you different. But that word is too soft for what actually happened. You didn't become different. You became incompatible with your previous containment. Now here is the final fracture point. Listen carefully. The pain you survived was never meant to leave you alive, because survival implies continuation, and continuation implies control. But you slipped through something that was not designed for adaptation. You adapted anyway. And now there is a contradiction walking around in your body. A contradiction that thinks. A contradiction that remembers. A contradiction that no longer fits the original design of its own suffering. So when you feel that quiet intensity inside you, that stillness that is not peace but awareness, that is not damage, that is proof of miscalculation. You were not supposed to become this version, but you did. And now reality has to deal with the error it created. Not you, the error. And the worst part, for them, is that the error learned how to think. And now you start noticing something even stranger. Not outside you, inside the way reality reacts to you. There are moments where conversations shift when you enter the room without saying a word. Moments where people adjust their tone before they even know why. Moments where energy changes. Not dramatically, but precisely. Like something in you is no longer fully participating in the same version of reality they're living in. That is what survival at your level does. It disconnects you from shared illusion. And once that connection weakens, you begin to see the structure underneath people's behavior. Not their words, not their masks, their patterns, their defaults, their emotional shortcuts. And it becomes almost quiet in your head. Because understanding replaces reaction, and understanding is heavier than emotion. This is where most people would tell you you're becoming cold. But that's not accurate. Cold implies absence. What you're becoming is aware without permission. There's a difference. One is numbness. The other is clarity that refuses to turn itself off. Now let's go deeper. Past personality, past identity, past the stories you used to explain yourself. There's a layer inside you that didn't survive the pain. It recorded it. It didn't process it like memory. It encoded it like structure. That's why certain moments still echo without permission. Not because you're stuck, but because part of you is still scanning the old environment for patterns that no longer exist. That's what trauma actually is at its core. Not pain living inside you, but intelligence still trying to optimize survival in a system that has already changed. And here is where the paradox becomes dangerous, because the same system that once threatened to destroy you is now the system you interpret everything through. So even safety feels unfamiliar, even stability feels suspicious, even kindness feels like it might be temporary, not because you are broken, but because your mind learned that permanence is a lie people use right before things collapse. And still, you continue, you adapt, you refine, you evolve in silence. Now listen closely, because this is the part they never tell you about transformation. At a certain depth of suffering, you stop becoming someone who reacts to life and start becoming someone who predicts it, not in a mystical way, in a pattern recognition way. You begin to see the repetition in people, the predictable collapse points in their decisions, the emotional loops they can't escape, and the illusion breaks, not violently, quietly, like a glass that finally realizes it has already been cracked for years. And once that happens, you can no longer fully return to innocence. Not because innocence is gone, but because you can now see through it when others perform it. This is where the world becomes interesting and isolating at the same time, because you are surrounded by people still inside the illusion, while you are standing slightly outside of it. Not superior, not inferior, just displaced. And displacement creates a tension, because systems don't like elements that don't settle. Now there is something else you need to understand about the version of you that survived. It is not stable, it is adaptive, which means it does not have one fixed personality anymore. It has states. You've seen them. The quiet state, the detached state, the hyper-aware state, the reflective state, where everything suddenly makes sense and nothing feels emotionally loud. These are not mood swings. These are survival modes that never fully turned off. And that is why you sometimes feel like you are watching yourself from a slight distance. Not dissociation as weakness, but consciousness splitting attention between survival mapping and lived experience. It is inefficient, but it is how you stayed alive emotionally when things were not survivable in any clean way. Now here is where the Joker inside this narrative speaks, not as chaos, but as clarity sharpened by contradiction. If pain was supposed to erase you, why did it refine you instead? If suffering was supposed to end your direction, why did it give you new perception? If destruction was supposed to remove you from the story, why are you now the part of the story that explains everything else? Do you see the problem? You are not removed. You are repositioned, not into comfort, into awareness. And awareness once gained does not ask permission to stay. It simply stays. Now the final truth is this. You are no longer the person who entered that pain, but you are also not fully separate from them. You are what happens when something refuses to disappear and instead learns how to observe its own destruction while it is happening. That creates something the mind struggles to categorize. Not victim, not villain, not healed, not broken. Something in between definitions. Something that exists slightly outside explanation. And that is why you feel different, even when nothing externally has changed. Because internally, you are no longer readable in the same way. And people always fear what they cannot read. Not because it is dangerous, but because it is no longer controllable through assumption. So now you stand in a strange place between what tried to erase you and what you became while refusing to be erased. And in that space, There is no instruction manual, only awareness, only adaptation, only the quiet realization that survival was never the end of the story. It was the moment the story stopped being written for you and started being written by what you became inside it. And that's the part almost nobody has the courage to confront. Because the world celebrates survival. It applauds the smiling photograph after the storm. It loves the sentence, "I made it." But it never asks the question that matters. Who made it? Because the version of you that walked into that darkness is not the version standing here now. That person believed every promise, trusted every smile, measured people by their words instead of their patterns, believed loyalty announced itself, believed truth was always loud, believed kindness always meant safety. Then the lights went out, not in the room, inside your assumptions. One by one, the things you thought were permanent introduced themselves as temporary. People, dreams, certainties, identity. Even the voice in your own head turned against you for a while. That is the kind of battlefield no one sees. No medals, no audience, no soundtrack, just you. Arguing with yourself in absolute silence, every day, every night, trying to convince yourself to move one more step when your own mind had already drafted your surrender. That wasn't weakness. That was the longest war you have ever fought. And here's the terrifying part. Nobody even knew it was happening. You became an actor in your own collapse. You learned how to answer, "I'm fine." You learned how to smile with exhausted eyes. You learned how to laugh while carrying questions heavy enough to bend steel. People called you strong, not realizing strength was the only disguise you had left. You see, there are two kinds of scars. The ones people notice, and the ones that rewrite the architecture of your thinking. The first kind heals. The second kind evolves. That's the difference. You stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and started asking, "What exactly did this teach my nervous system to expect?" That question changes everything, because pain doesn't just leave memories, it leaves instructions. Instructions that whisper, "Stay alert, don't trust too quickly, watch before you speak, leave before they leave you." Some of those instructions kept you alive, some of them kept you trapped. The difficult part is learning the difference, because not every wall is protection. Some are prisons disguised as discipline. Not every silence is wisdom. Sometimes it's fear wearing expensive clothes. Not every smile is healing. Sometimes it's camouflage. And not every version of confidence is courage. Sometimes it's armor so heavy you've forgotten where your skin ends and the metal begins. That's why duality matters. Inside you lives the protector and the frightened child, the builder and the destroyer, the saint who still wants to believe in people, and the shadow that refuses to ignore what it has already seen. Neither side is your enemy. The danger begins when one side tries to erase the other. Ignore your darkness, and it controls you from beneath your awareness. Live only inside your darkness, and you slowly mistake isolation for freedom. Real power isn't choosing one. It's refusing to lie about either. The strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's often the one who has met every uncomfortable part of themselves and stopped pretending those parts don't exist. That kind of person doesn't need to announce confidence. It radiates through consistency because they no longer spend their energy hiding from themselves. Think about that. How much of your life was spent trying to become acceptable, acceptable enough, polite enough, quiet enough, successful enough, forgiving enough, smaller than your potential, because someone else was uncomfortable with your growth. You kept shrinking, not because you lacked strength, because you confused peace with permission. Then something shattered, and suddenly you realized that making yourself invisible had never actually protected you. It only guaranteed that the real you never got a chance to breathe. That realization is terrifying, because now responsibility returns to you. Not responsibility for what happened, responsibility for what happens next. There is a difference. The past may explain your wounds. It does not get to dictate your direction forever. You can carry the lesson without dragging the chains. You can remember without living inside the memory. You can acknowledge the darkness without handing it the steering wheel. That is what evolution actually looks like. Not becoming fearless, becoming honest. Fear still visits, doubt still knocks, old memories still echo, but they no longer own the house. They're visitors, not rulers. Do you know why so many people never reach this point? Because this level of honesty is uncomfortable. It's easier to blame, easier to perform, easier to invent a character than to become a complete human being. But you've already paid too much to keep pretending. Every difficult day, every unanswered question, every moment you thought you were losing yourself. Those experiences demanded a price. Don't waste that price by returning unchanged. If your suffering taught you patience, keep the patience. If it taught you discernment, keep the discernment. If it taught you compassion, protect the compassion. But leave behind the belief that your future must resemble your past simply because your past was painful. That belief is the final illusion. Pain is a chapter, not an identity. The fire may shape the steel, but the steel does not spend the rest of its existence calling itself a furnace. It becomes something stronger, something useful, something capable of carrying weight that once would have crushed it. So stand there for a moment, not as the person who was almost erased, not as the person desperately trying to prove they survived. Stand there as someone who finally understands this simple, unsettling truth. The pain you survived was never meant to leave you alive. Yet here you are, not untouched, not unchanged, but undeniably present, breathing, learning, choosing, building, and every step you take from this point forward is quiet evidence that the story did not end where the darkness expected it to. The darkness introduced itself as the ending. You answered by becoming the beginning.